Hi, everybody. Welcome to Story Spark. My name is Gavin. And
I'm Daniel.
And we're about to tell you some tales of Thanksgiving Town.
Mm-hmm. This is Story Spark, by the way.
Oh, I said that.
Oh, did you?
I did.
Oh, my bad.
It's all good.
Anyways,
so this story title came again from Rosie Jade.
Yeah, so you guys give us some story titles.
Yeah.
And we'll give you a shout out.
We love story titles. We're trying to increase our viewership. We're very new, so any feedback, anything of that nature is like super duper appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
How can we be better for you guys? Let us know. What was the title from Rosie?
The Gobbler.
The Gobbler. So, this November tale is titled The Gobbler.
Looks like a keyhole. So, little tiny Tim, he heard the rooster crowing, he woke up, and he heard his mom and dad talking in the kitchen. And he looked, or he got out of bed, and he went and he peered through the keyhole of his room to see what his mom and dad were talking about, because his dad sounded kind of excited. And his dad had a wooden box on the table, and you could see some hay coming out of the top, and he might have seen maybe even a little movement, fluff, like maybe a little gray fluff or something peeking out of the top, but he wasn't quite sure. So he waited for a second to see if his parents would say anything else, and he heard them talking about how this might be a good investment for the holidays coming up and stuff. And he was like, oh, a present? An early present? And so Tiny Tim threw the door open, and his parents heard him and turned, and he comes running up to see what it is. And Tiny Tim's dad goes, check out our turkey we've got. And it was just a little baby turkey inside of this box. Hi, dog. Go lay down. And the dad said, you can name the turkey if you want.
Like a little turklet.
A little turklet. And Tiny Tim,
What's a baby turkey called?
I don't know. A waddle?
A waddle?
I don't think so. Anyways, so he, Tiny Tim, all excitedly thought about it, and he goes, the Gobbler.
Yes.
Popcorn Babe.
That seems to be a scale. Tiny Tim, unlike the classic Tiny Tim, isn't like, he doesn't have a deformed leg. He's
very healthy.
He's very healthy. He's a healthy kid. He has no pets. His parents are like super opposed to pets. And he's kind of like, oh my gosh, they got me a tiny baby waddler as a gift. How am I going to take care of this little baby waddler? The Gobbler, the Waddler. So, little Tiny Tim makes like a little corner of his room all comfy. Has like a bunch of blankets out and some pillows. And he meticulously draws all these little pictures of him and the Gobbler together.
Aww.
And outside, running around, he shields him from the vultures circling overhead.
Oh, gosh.
And then he finally is like, my parents were so, adverse to pets in the past. Like, why did my dad finally get me a turkey? There must be something special about this little turkey. So he goes out to his dad, and he asks his dad, hey, how did you find this little tiny baby turkey? Tim knew his dad had, a super important job, but he didn't remember that his dad actually works at the White House and with the president.
Whoa.
And, his dad sat him down and he said, well, Tim, there's this certain thing called a pardoned turkey. It's the president's favorite turkey, and you'd say it's very fortunate. Ha ha ha. Tim didn't really know why the turkey was fortunate, but he was like, well, thank goodness. He's like, well, the president keeps a couple turkeys around. One was a male, one was a female, and they had little the Gobbler. So your little the Gobbler is a gift from the justice system of America. Tim got a flash in his head of, the blind lady with the scales, the Supreme Court, and his little baby gobbler running the U.S. one day. And it just made their playtime that much better. Popcorn, babe.
Oh, looks like a little dice. So Tiny Tim and the Gobbler, they were just having a fun time. The Gobbler was getting bigger every day, and Tiny Tim would like save scraps from his plate to go to give to the Gobbler afterwards and everything. And they'd run around the yard together and do little races. They'd take turns like chasing each other, just playing all types of games. He even taught the Gobbler how to play Monopoly, which was Tiny Tim's favorite game.
Wow, that's rare that you have a kid that likes Monopoly. I remember just...
The Gobbler, he could roll the dice, but he couldn't count his money, so Tiny Tim had to count for him.
Tiny Tim always won.
So Tiny Tim kind of always won. And that's why it was Tiny Tim's favorite game. Because the Gobbler always let him win. He was such a nice turkey. So, after a rousing game of Monopoly, Tiny Tim and the Gobbler went outside, but they weren't alone. The Gobbler stood still. It was dusk right now. The sun was just going down, but they could see a pair of glowing eyes off in the distance, watching them. They were already a good distance from the house. They were actually closer to the thicket where they seen the eyes than they were from the house. Tiny Tim noticed what the Gobbler was looking at and saw the eyes and froze. Popcorn Gavin.
The moon. So, the Gobbler, Tiny Tim, frozen, looking off into the distance at this pair of glowing eyes. They decide to go over together. Just a little bit closer. They don't know what it is.
They investigate it?
Yes!
Oh my gosh.
They go a little bit closer. They start to hear it. It's like this growl. It sounds like a really big cat or something.
Oh gosh.
The Gobbler sprints. You hear a on the fence, but whatever it is can't get in.
Oh.
Tiny Tim runs to find the Gobbler, searching for him. Gobbler, Gobbler! He finally finds him shaking, quivering beneath a tiny bush. It starts to rain on both of them.
Oh. Hey.
So, months roll by that turn into years. Tiny Tim and the Gobbler are the best of friends.
Years?
Years. They're running around. They're doing good. They're finally, living their good life. Well, I'll say months, not years. The leaves start to change, and the Gobbler is getting pretty big.
Oh.
And, their friendship is just growing and growing and growing. All of a sudden, Tiny Tim's dad is called out to work. And it sounds really important. His dad is flustered. His mom is upset. And, he just hears, his mom on the phone all the time, when are you coming home, blah, blah, blah. He can't say where he is. He's working for the White House. It's very intense.
Ooh.
And one day, a black car drives up to their driveway. His mom is so scared. All she can see are two silhouettes coming out of the car towards her door in the moonlight.
Oh.
And Tiny Tim and the Gobbler just stand there holding each other. Anticipating the
Can
news
a turkey hold you?
that they're going to get.
Go lay down.
Popcorn. Daniel.
Oh, it looks like a question mark. So Tiny Tim and the Gobbler on the porch. Mom walks forward to talk to the two men. Tiny Tim is straining to hear what they're saying. He hears something about his dad and his mom looking very, very worried. And the men leave, and Mom comes back, and she's crying a little. And the Mom says, "Timmy, Your father was out on a very special mission for the government, and they don't know where he is. They haven't had contact with him for 48 hours. And they want us to, they wanted us to know, and so be praying for your father. And Tiny Tim was like distraught. He's really sad. He's he ran inside with Gobbler. And he's sitting on the bed. He goes, Gobbler, what do we do? What do we do? And the Gobbler's just snuggling up against him. They were so perplexed. Just then, Tiny Tim was like, the Gobbler and I, we can save Dad. We gotta save Dad. We gotta figure out where he is. So, Tiny Tim peeked out of his room, wiped a tear from his eyes, Gobbler under one arm. He didn't see his mom around. So he went into his parents' room and he pulled a bobby pin out of his mom's desk and then went to his dad's office, which he knew he always locked. He shoved it in there and started jiggling it around, and then bing, and it popped open, and he went into his dad's office to see what he could find where his dad might be. Popcorn Gavin.
It's like a cool, creepy pyramid. So Tiny Tim is in his dad's office. There's rich mahogany everywhere. You know that like green felt that's on like every fancy desk you can imagine, just covered in it. It smells like cigar smoke and good bourbon. And he goes around his dad's desk and he's trying to open the thing, trying to open the drawer. They're all locked. The Gobbler looks up, has a bobby pin in his mouth.
Oh.
Thank you, Gobbler. Opens up the file.
Yes.
Starts rummaging through files. All I can see are like these giant question marks and confidential. Tim is like pretty young. He doesn't really know which one to reach for. He doesn't know like the Dewey Decimal System of filing. So he just closes his eyes, reaches in, grabs something, and pulls it out on the table. As the file opens, all these black and white pictures start to slide out from it. Loosely paper clipped to the file itself. He starts reading underground turkey operation, the Pentagon, and he sees an address. He knows that the Pentagon is not far from where he lives. He's been on a class field trip there. So he takes the Gobbler under his arm and he says, guess what, Gobbler? We're going to the Pentagon. Neither of them can drive. So, not because they've had too much to drink, but because they're both young and one's a turkey. So what they do is they start to walk to the Pentagon. As they're walking around, they see signs for it. They start to get there, and they start walking around the fence, which is oddly not patrolled at this hour. And they see a large sign above the fence.
They just walked there?
With a trapdoor, yeah.
Wow.
The Pentagon's right down the street from where they live.
Wow.
His dad works in the White House.
This makes sense. It makes sense.
He sees a lit up pyramid with an eye in the center of it.
What? In the Pentagon?
No, just a sign on the outside of the fence of the Pentagon with a trapdoor beneath it.
Oh my gosh.
Him and the Gobbler look at each other. Look at the trapdoor. What happens next? Popcorn, Daniel.
It looks like a thought or like a cartoon like comment bubble. Tiny Tim, he was a little scared. But the Gobbler, he knew Tiny Tim loved his dad and he had to be saved. So the Gobbler started feeling around the trapdoor with his little gobbler feet. And just found his nail clipped on like a little ring. He went, and the trapdoor gave way. And Gobbler's like, whoo! He spread his wings out. And goes, whoo! Starts floating down, and Tiny Tim's like, Gobbler! And just then Gobbler started to like gradually slope away. And Tiny Tim's like, yeah.
Into a vacuous hole.
No, it was like he like gently sloped that way. So Tiny Tim knew it was kind of like a slide. Nice. And so Tiny Tim jumped in, said, I'm coming, Gobbler! And he went sliding down, and they got into this basement, but they couldn't see a thing. But then Tiny Tim, because turkeys have pretty good night vision, I think, felt the gobbler's claws come to him and pushed a box towards him. It was a box of matches. Tiny Tim knew he wasn't supposed to play with matches, but this was an extreme circumstance. So he pulled out some matches, lit one up, and started to look around, and he saw all these symbols on the walls. The eye, the pyramid, and he began to think to himself, whoa, like what's going on here? So as Tiny Tim was thinking about this, looking around, he then saw a door, and he made through it and cracked it open and looked out, and now it was lit. And so he put his match out real quick, and the halls were empty. He thought, where could my dad be? Popcorn Gavin.
Smiley face, maybe, kind of looks slightly apprehensive. All right, so he's wandering the halls of this underground tunnel through the Pentagon. He steps on a tile, it sinks, and a huge arrow flies past his face, flies past the gobbler's face. Gobbler, stay close, we're not safe. They keep going. Yes. There are booby traps everywhere down here. They see some vines. Timmy has to swing across this vine to get to the next side of the thing, and the gobbler, although he doesn't think he can fly, starts to fly and lands next to it. Oh. The next obstacle almost was made for a turkey, one might think. It was like a large box full of loose seed. The gobbler could not contain his joy. He starts to run into the box, playing with the seed. Timmy knows that something might be up. He's never seen the gobbler so happy, but he says, "Gobbler, stop! It might be a trap!" The gobbler can't stop himself. All of a sudden, the gobbler starts to sink in the seeds.
Oh.
Just slowly, as it comes swirling towards the middle. Just as the seeds start to swirl towards the middle of this big box, he hears something. Help! Oh. Sounds like his dad. Gobbler, no, I have to save you! Help! Gobbler, fly out! Gobbler, I love you! You can't die! Swallowed by the seeds. The gobbler is now somewhere. Timmy doesn't know. Timmy doesn't know if he's dead. Timmy doesn't know if he's gone. He starts to cry. I can't lose my dad and the gobbler. No, my friend, my best friend. Go lay down, baby. Then he hears it again.
Go lay down.
Help! Help! Timmy starts to run. He's wiping the tears from his face. It's flush with fear. Dad, I'm coming. I'm coming, Dad. Just then, Timmy opens the door and sees his dad smile from him, but tied up to a chair. No one around in an empty room. He also hears a faint popcorn, Daniel.
Kind of looks like a magnet, or maybe a U. Ooh. Tiny Tim, being a very smart kid, knew that dads are very helpful. So he went to go help his dad first.
For once.
And he runs over to him, and his dad goes, "Son, just," he's starting to try the knot, but Tiny Tim wasn't very good at undoing knots yet. And he goes, "Son, I have a pocket knife in my pants." And so the kid, he sees a little thing on the outside and takes it, and he was like, oh yeah, his dad had trained him how to use a knife. So he appropriately flipped it out and cut the ropes. And then flipped it back in, but he pocketed it, not thinking about it. Oh. Dad got up. He's like, "Son, let's get out of here." And Tiny Tim goes, "No, Gobbler, he fell into a trap." And his dad kind of looked perplexed, like, "Traps?" And he's like, "Yeah, there's a bunch of traps down here, and he fell into this seed." And he's like, "What?" And Tiny Tim like grabs his hand and pulls him. And he's like, "Yeah." And he shows him the big thing where the seed was. And his dad goes, "Son, I don't know if we can get Gobbler." He's like, "Dad!" We gotta
Can they
save
still hear
Gobbler.
Gobbler? Is Gobbler still alive?
And then you just heard a little.
Okay, so he's alive. Cool.
And his dad's like, I don't know where that went. And son goes, I'll find it. And he just jumps in and goes,
Dang.
and the dad's
Adventure
like,
has made
Tiny
him
Tim.
risky. Tiny. I love how his name is forever Tiny.
Because he was tiny. He was able to slip down there with Gobbler. But his dad couldn't fit. So he hits onto this pile of seed. And Gobbler's down there with a bunch of other turkeys. And he's like, Gobbler, where are you? And then Gobbler comes running up. He's like, oh, there you are. Thank heaven. And just then, there was the ghost of Washington. 8'7", weighed a freaking 10. And he was going to feast on all those turkeys. And he thought all was lost. That Washington was going to eat all of them. He saw some of those turkeys started getting gobbled up. And Tiny Tim's like, no.
So the ghost of Washington is just devouring whole turkeys? Like, what happens? Do they, like, disintegrate into nothingness when he takes a bite of them or something? That's what I'm
They just go into his mouth and then they're like gone.
They're gone forever. Oh, my gosh. It's crazy.
It was kind of dim in there, but his eyes adjusted and he saw a door. Tiny Tim made for it, and he was trying to get it, but it was locked. And so he pulled out the knife and he was like trying to wedge it in there, and he started yelling for his dad, 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 and he didn't hear his dad's voice coming from up above anymore. He's like, oh no. Just then, he found a little magnet on the ground, or it looked like a little magnet, like this little U-shaped thing. And he picked it up, and the ghost of Washington was getting closer and closer, sucking up more turkeys. And he put it to the door, and it was like he heard like this little chink, because there was like this circle thing on it, and he like slid it over and like opened up the door. He's like, oh, and it came open, and when he opened up, he saw his dad running towards him. He's like, yes. He goes, Dad, the ghost of Washington. And he's like, I know,
son. It's in the files. It's in the files.
It's in the files. So him and Gobbler get out of the room. His dad closes the door and he goes, Dad, what about the other turkeys? And he goes, son, it's not worth it. And Tiny Tim had never seen the look on his dad's face like that before. Dang. And he knew it was
really
not
wasn't worth it.
So they Tiny Tim told his dad about the trap door. They came down, and his dad was able to push them out and like climb out himself down this little slide thing and get home. And they never found out why their dad had been tied up in the bottom of the Pentagon. But Gobbler and Tiny Tim were safe and had saved their father.
They saved the day. Oh, yeah.
And got home just in time for Thanksgiving dinner.
And the Gobbler closed his eyes while they all ate a turkey.
Oh, excuse me. The end.
The end. Make sure to pardon your turkeys this Thanksgiving into your mouth holes. Unless you're vegetarian. Then eat a
tofurkey. Also, check us out on your favorite podcasts, YouTube. Send us some story things titles for stories on Instagram. What's our handle?
It's at StorySpark TV. And we are always available on there. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, make sure to let us know so we can make a good show for y'all.
All right. See you guys.